Hey folks, it's David back again for the Retro Rides podcast. And this week we have world-class automotive and other photography. The photographer Amy Shaw is with us, famous mainly, I guess, originally for shots from Goodwood, Event, Revival and such like. But that's led on to work with Jaguar Land Rover, Octane Magazine, Evo, Classic Driver, Triumph, on and on and on. Also regular on doing road trips, adventures, and an occasional bit of beach-based motorcycle racing, as I understand it. So I'm really pleased to have her here. Welcome, Amy.
Hello, thank you very much for having me along.
It's a pleasure. So I'm going to start you with the traditional first question of why cars? Why the interest in cars and photographing cars?
Well, it is funny, really, because it started a number of generations ago, which I won't go into too much detail because it'd be a very long story. But my dad is massively into cars and always has been, and especially classic cars. And he was into classic car restoration. He was the spray man. And basically has always kind of been, like, cars have always been around us, my brother and I. And then when I was 19, I got my Mini that I still have, Mayo, and that was basically just to get me to and from university. I didn't know how to fix them, and I still don't really know now. But that kind of started my love for classic cars. And then, yeah, the photography side of things, I graduated university in something completely different, not photography at all. And then friends of my dad's, who he used to work for, said, "Oh, we've built this replica Ferrari P4. We just need some reference shots of it just to show our own work." So they knew that I had a nice camera and they just said, "Would you mind taking some pictures of it?" And I'd never shot a car before in my life. And that was my first experience. And then roughly about the same time, my dad was like, "Do you want to come to the Goodwood Revival? I mean, I know you're not that into cars, but I think you'll really enjoy the atmosphere." And it's maybe the second or third time we'd gone anyway. And I was like, "Yes, I'll bring my new camera along and shoot it as well." And yeah, that's kind of how it kick-started. And that would have been 7 years ago this year. So that's long and short.
That's a pretty quick experience of going from I'm going to go to Revival and take my camera to being flown around the world to do interesting things in cars for photography. That's amazing.
Honestly, so, it was a crazy snowball. It was like hanging on to the edge of your seat as it. Yeah, I still kind of look back now and think, man, this has gone really quickly.
I talked to you, believe it or not. Would have been 2012. I spoke to you about coming to do one of our Retro Rides events.
Oh wow!
And yeah, I know. And
that's a long time ago.
Yeah. And it would have been 2012. It must have been something like that, if not a little bit after. I'm trying to remember now.
Just after, because I think my first car I shot 2013, so probably would have been.
Yeah. It was the first set of photos I saw from the Revival. That was it. So it would have been 13, 14, would have been thereabouts. And we'd just moved to our event to Chelsea Walsh, and I was like, I saw those photographs, and I was like, this is someone that gets it, like understands how to take a photograph of an event, as opposed to taking a photograph of the cars at events. Like that, there's perfectly acceptable, brilliant people that take photographs of cars at events, but you had sort of something else in those photographs. I was like, oh, I've got to see if I can get you to this event. But between sort of like it obviously didn't come together, because it snowballed so quickly for you. It went from like, oh, this is a lovely set of photographs, and sort of within from my time frame, sort of within a year, you were like, photographing for kind of big companies and official photographer for all sorts of things. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily have the time to come to our thing. And that was it's been an interesting experience, sort of watching the journey of Amy Shaw. What I was going to ask you is, your first car was your Mini. What are your current cars? Because you have an interesting collection of cars around the place at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny. So I've got my Mini. I think is probably officially my only car still, which is sadly not. I was meant to pick it up today or tomorrow. I was meant to be going to pick it up from Suffolk, where it's currently had a whole engine rebuild by a guy called Crafted Classics Tuning, and it was so that was meant to be coming back today, but it's sadly not because of the lockdown. But otherwise, I mean, this is quite the handy thing about having my fiance as also a massive car nut is that we now collectively have a number of vehicles. So he has the cars and I have the motorbikes. So he's got something like I can't even count off the top of my head. Not loads, but like I don't know, 3 or 4 cars, and I've got I think 4 motorcycles, and so yeah, we've also got the Land Rover Defender called Mildred, which scarily is our most reliable, or what we deem our most reliable car.
Shocking.
And then we have Craig has also got another Mini himself. His first car, his Mini, called Red Peril or Ketchup, because I've got mayo. And then we've also got Rupert, the Austin 7 Chummy, which is hilarious. The starter motor at the moment has broken, and you can start it with the handle, but honestly, it's like getting blood out of a stone. It's so hard to try and start it with the handle. So the easiest way we figured out how to start it is just I push it every time we want to go out and out. I just push it and off we go. So we bump start it. And then, I've got 4 motorcycles called Hugo, Bo, Bessie and Pat. 2 of them live in the house. And then one of them is a race bike. That's Bessie. 3 of them live in the house. And then, my 1972 Honda is my newest bike, which is what I call my daily bike. But at the minute, it's less daily, as we've all experiencing in the car world.
Yeah. How did if you started with minis, how did the bikes come around? That was is that a later evolution, or have you always been a bit of a bike person?
No, it is. It's definitely later evolution. And just before I go on, I forgot to mention the jewel in our collection is Craig's hot rod, Old Red.
Oh yes,
very
yes,
well known.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that. But yeah, motorbikes. So I got into bikes because I started shooting cars, and from somebody that's kind of out of the automotive world, I thought that cars and motorcycles are very closely linked. And I thought, okay, well, maybe clients will kind of roll from cars into motorcycles. They're totally different worlds. So, I managed to get a bike shoot for the first thing I shot bike-wise was the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, which is a massive charity event that's run every year. And whilst being there, I thought, these people do not cross over into the car world at all. And I was just like, they're really cool. They're all riding these really cool motorcycles, and I kind of felt a bit left out. And so at the time, I was still shooting weddings. And so I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to try and learn how to ride a motorcycle, I don't want to do it while I'm shooting weddings, because if I came off a bike and then broke my leg or something, I'd feel really terrible if I couldn't shoot a wedding, because car shoots can be moved, or you can just say, I'm really sorry, I've broken my leg, I can't come to the shoot. But weddings were a bit different. So it wasn't until I quit shooting weddings that I then thought, right, I'm going to learn how to ride a motorcycle. And then just thought to myself, but it started off really because my dad's always ridden, but then my mum made him stop riding when we were kids. And then it wasn't until my brother turned 18 that he was like, oh, I'm going to ride a motorcycle. And then I was like, well, he's riding a bike. Now I want to ride a bike. So I'm definitely going to learn how to ride a bike. And then it was the point where both of us were riding, where my dad was like, well, the kids are riding. I'm no longer an influence. I'm going to join in with them. So yeah, we've all become back to being a riding family.
Good. Gone full circle.
Exactly, yes. But I mean, the by being able to ride a motorcycle has definitely opened up quite a lot of doors to me, and just not in terms of just photography side of things, but also making friends and social media side of things. It's I'm really glad I've done it. I absolutely love it. And so, but even from a business point of view, riding motorcycles has ended up opening doors I didn't quite expect. So yeah.
It's interesting that, as you say, that you would feel naturally from the outside that there would be a crossover between all these groups of people with sort of wheeled machines, but exactly. It seems less of a melting pot than it might first appear. I mean, even within those sort of circles as well, sort of the classic car world and kind of the modern car world, there's not actually as much overlap as it might appear from the outside as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do notice more of an overlap between the car world and the aviation world than I do the car and motorcycle world. So, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise when I got here.
Yeah. Did you always want to be a photographer when you grew up, or did you have other? Well, I mean, you went to university for something else, so I'm assuming you had other plans.
So honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. It wasn't until I was probably 16 and I got my first camera and I thought, okay, I really enjoy doing this. But I thought realistically, I didn't think it was a job that I could do. Like my dream job would have been working for the National Geographic, because I thought that was the only way I could travel the world and take pictures, because that's all I wanted to do. But I thought, no one can get paid to do that. So I just didn't ever really try, because honestly, I thought it was so unachievable. I just didn't even try. And then, so it wasn't until I went to university to study something else, because I thought, okay, I don't want to study photography because I feel that I won't realistically be able to get a job in it. And I thought, I enjoy shooting it as a hobby. I thought I'll stick to it, using it as a hobby. So I went to university to study metalsmithing or silversmithing. And my intention was to go into homeware design, because the course I did was also things like ceramics and textiles. And I specialised in the metal side of things. So I thought I would become some form of product designer for homeware. So nice. That was my kind of plan, and then that totally never happened.
That's I guess a regular story. People have one set of plans for themselves, and life has a slightly different set of plans for themselves as it opens doors for you.
Exactly. So I mean, that was kind of it. It was an opportunity came up, the P4 shoot and the revival shoot, and I was just like, yeah, okay. And it was nice, because I think the main thing is I didn't have any fear of losing out on the opportunities, because I was so pessimistic from the get-go. I was like, nah, anything's a bonus. So it wasn't like I was really going for something and I thought, I really want to make sure this goes well, because I think of the future opportunities. It just never even crossed my mind. I just thought, yeah, this sounds like fun. I'll just go and do that. So everything was a bonus, really, because I thought I'd start at zero.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no pressure, because there's nothing to lose, I guess.
Exactly, that was it. There was nothing to lose. I just graduated. I was still living at my mum and dad's. I was, I didn't have like loads of bills or anything. I was probably the best and only position I realistically could be to not fear any of the outcomes. I was very, very lucky.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a good serendipitous set of circumstances, but you find those things in life. Occasionally you'll look around, or you look back and you go, oh, that was the perfect time for that to happen. So that was good. So you're I've seen interviews and stuff with you before. As you say, you sort of you're well enough known that you get people come, like myself, actually, people come and talk to you, and there's interviews with you out there. And you mentioned influences, people like Greg Williams, who is, for those that don't know, is kind of famous for photographing, I would say, candid celebrity shots, but they're not really candid. They're just very natural celebrity shots, and they're beautiful shots, and you can find them on Instagram and people like that. And I didn't want to ask you for a list of your influences. I just wanted to know kind of how your influences influence you. So what do you see from your influences appearing in your work, or what would you like to see appearing in your work from the people you are influenced by, rather than just fans of their work, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. So for me, the base, I mean, all of my the people that influence me in my work have this connection that I think, if I'm just trying to think, I think all of them only shoot with natural light and what is there. So a lot of my influences are conflict photographers. So going into war, you do not have time to stop and set up lighting or ask people to pose or anything like that. It is grabbing that moment as you can, because that's the only moment you're going to get. And I think that is incredible. I really, really do. And I think just the idea of documenting people's lives, and not only in terms of the conflict side of things, but also the celebrity photographers. Like, so Harry Benson is another one of mine, who's much earlier celebrity photographer and hung around with the Beatles for many years. And I love his work, and I used to read his books even before I owned my own camera, I think. So all of them have this thread of natural light and natural moments, and that's kind of what I try to carry on in my own work. And the thing about being in the automotive world and the automotive photography world is a lot of things are set up, and it can sometimes be difficult to try and counter that with the way that I like to work. So this is why I love things like the Goodwood Revival and road trips, because they are things that just happen, and you just have to be watching everything all the time to be able to get the right moment. the minute somebody says to me, oh, we need this car to be photographed, and we just like it to be more like a setup studio type thing, or not studio, but on location. I mean, it's great and I really enjoy it, but they're the ones that I definitely feel like I don't excel at personally, because I think it's just different to the way I like to work. So yeah, my favorite images that I've produced have been the ones where they are just whatever you can shoot at that moment and really hopefully try and tell a story, more so than this is a beautiful car in a beautiful location that we have put there. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense. In fact, in some ways, I think that is part of the difference in your photography when it sort of first started appearing on the scene, as it were.
Yes.
Was that I mean, I'm not a great photographer by any. I'm not even a good photographer by any stretch of the imagination. But when I would go to events, I would document the cars that were there. Like here's like the 30 cars that I enjoyed at this event. Whereas your photography was much more around the atmosphere of the event, and there were not many people taking photographs of that type at that time. Now there have progressively been more, and I suspect that's partly your influence. And I think also actually some of the wider accessibility of photography as well has brought people along that want to tell a different story than which particular rare car or whatever was at certain events. So that's kind of it's interesting that your influences come from a world of documentary photography and natural light versus coming from a world of sort of studio photography and that kind of fairly well established way of photographing automotive stuff. So from covering an event like Goodwood, or even like a travel trip or some other thing, how many shots will you be taking on a daily basis? Because obviously we only ever get to see the ones you've picked out to say these are the good ones. How many shots are you taking?
Wow. Okay. So especially when I first started out, I think I took a lot more than I do now. I've got to a point now where I can definitely pick and choose my shots a lot more easily. But on an average day, I would say at Goodwood, I get upset if I've not shot more than kind of 1,500 to 2,000 images a day, I think, on an event. It's easier when you have got something that's a bit more set up, because you can take your time and choose your shots a lot more. But when it is down to something that is, a moment happening and you're not going to get that back, I definitely overshoot. I think the most shots I've come from any shoot at all would probably be one of my earliest revivals, which was something like 6,000 or 7,000 shots over the course of 3 days, or I think it was. And then I probably the images that I come out with at the end, initially when I again first started out, was probably somewhere between 10 and 20% of what I shot. Now I've managed to get that number up to about 40%, I think, roughly. So it ends up being like my edited selection. I would roughly say about 600 images a day, if that makes I think that works out.
That's more than I initially take at an event. But it's interesting. It from there's an interesting difference, and for people that are doing car photography and event photography in general, there's a lesson there in that if you're constantly shooting, you're constantly looking for the next shot. And I think that actually encourages you to be a bit more creative in some ways. I know that I found recently with another friend of mine, we were trying to not just take like 2 or 3 shots of a car, we'd take like sort of 10 or 15 of an individual car. And by the 5th or 6th shot, I was having to get much more creative than ordinarily I would. And I think what you're doing, as well as obviously your natural eye and the light and everything, which we'll come on to, is that if you're taking that many shots, you're forcing yourself to move and find them. And that's I suspect probably a good lesson for people that are getting interested in this stuff to learn.
Exactly.
It's not the wrong thing to take loads of photos. It's actually probably more the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's because as soon as you've got your initial, there is always going to be the best angle of a car. Like for me, I love that front 3/4 look. And once you've got that, you kind of think, okay, well, what next? And it is that, as you said, that moving around and trying to figure out, okay, well, what happens if I put something in the foreground, whether it's another car or a person, or if you've got some greenery. One of my most, I think, difficult shoots I've had to do in recent years is I had to shoot for Pirelli tyres at the Geneva Motor Show a couple of years back, last year, a couple of years back. And it was basically tyres on a stand in a hall that had no light. So I thought, okay, how are we going to get creative here? Because I knew that also I was going to be posting some of these pictures onto social media. And that suddenly was like, okay, I really need to push these boundaries of what I can find. So I went onto the other stands that were surrounding the Pirelli stand to try and find bits of like glass that were reflective, that I could, use something that could get some interesting light going. Or it was suddenly a real push to try and find these creative points. And it's the exact same as when you're trying to look at a car. But just trying to make something creative and interesting out of whatever you have around you really makes you think, rather than having the ability just to be like, let's just shoot in the golden hour and we'll have it at this angle, at this height, and we'll,
that's one of the interesting things. So photography is only really two things. It's a frame and it's the light in that frame.
Yes.
It's quite an interesting leveler. I've said this. In fact, I said this to Larry. If people listen to the last podcast, it's interesting going to the same event. And in fact, I used you as an example. As another photographer, because you can take the same photos, broadly speaking, equipment aside and all that, because it's just the frame and the light. And it's super interesting seeing what people come back with from an event that you may or may not have gone to. Like if you went to that event and you tried to take the same picture of the same car as me, for example, my pictures would be completely different to yours. Not saying, I mean, obviously they're likely to be better from yours, but I'm just saying from depending on what we're trying to achieve with our photographs, we will take completely different photos. And I think that sort of information about you kind of like scouting around the Pirelli stand, trying to find the reflection and the light. You seem to use light a lot in your photographs.
Yeah, definitely. And it's difficult when there is none. Like if it's a really grey revival, I struggle. but that's when you get, so I try to teach people that if you haven't got light, and I have to remind myself when I get to a point like this, work with either with colours and shape. So it's those three aspects, light, colour and shape, that I really try and use to create the images that I like.
That's a good tip, to say the least. So when you're assessing the shots that you've got back from your, 1,000, 1,500, whatever it is, shots you brought back from a day out, an event or doing a shoot, how are you assessing them? As you're, I'm assuming you're using some Lightbox software, Lightroom, something like that, and you're flicking through them. What makes you stop on an image and go, right, that's on the shortlist to edit further?
So I basically shove everything into Lightroom, and then I will flag it a colour. So I flag it red if I like it, and then I'd leave it blank if I don't. And I'm now quite quick at it, but I think it's because I'm quite brutal. So if an image doesn't strike me initially as I want to look further into that image, or just look at it for longer than a split second, then it's probably just gone. I just look at it. Or if I'm a bit if I'm not too sure about an image, I think, what is interesting out of this? Is there an interesting person in it? Is there an interesting car or an interesting moment? And if there's none of those things, I'm just like, it's just a bog standard shot of a thing. And so I think, I just get rid of it. And sometimes I will shoot the same moment. I might shoot either 10 to 20 frames of the same moment. So I then have to kind of think, okay, which is the best moment or best 2 or 3 shots out of this set? So I don't know if there's an image of mine which I love, and I post about it quite regularly. It's in the Goodwood paddocks, where there's a diagonal shaft of this misty light. And that moment I probably shot on both my cameras on different lenses of, about 20 frames. And there's that one shot that I think, that to me is the shot. And I think I saved maybe 2 or 3 shots from that moment. But otherwise, I'm just quite brutal, really. And I just think if that doesn't grab my attention for longer than a split second, and I'm the person that took that, and I should like that shot, then other people I can't expect would like it. Or not that I shoot for other people at all, but I just think about it being an image. The idea is that you show a photograph to other people. Not all the time, but that's my intention. So
yeah, no, I think that's the legitimate way of looking at it. It's a Marie Kondo-esque. Does it bring you joy?
Yes.
No, then get rid of it.
Basically, yes. And does it bring me joy? Does it bring me interest? And if it doesn't, then I'm just like, this is just. So that's the other thing about cars. Sometimes I get sucked into photographing what is considered a nice shot of a nice car. And then I think to myself, well, no, it is a nice shot of a nice car, but it is a boring shot of a nice car. And so that's the thing that I think tries to make me either shoot a little bit differently or try to basically, just to try to stand out from what I deem boring car photography, which there is so much of. And it's the reason I never even considered photographing a car before I got into car photography myself. I only ever saw what I considered not being interested in cars at the time, boring shots of cars. If you love cars, obviously that is a completely different look. You think, oh man, that's amazing. I love the design of that machine. But because it wasn't my interest when I started, I was looking for that emotion and that atmosphere. And the first person that I saw that did that and that got me interested in cars and car photography was Laurent Naval. And I don't know if you've seen his work, but it's stunning. It really makes you think, cars can be cool. And it's because he doesn't just photograph the cars. And I think that was what really inspired me initially.
I think I agree on all points. As a person that is a boring car photographer by choice, not through. I take non-boring photos when I don't take pictures of cars. It is a different discipline or a different atmosphere that you're trying to do. It's a difference, I think, between documenting the vehicle and documenting the experience, which I've sort of said a couple of times now, but I think that anybody listening to this that wants to either try something different with their photography or maybe would like to get into photography for car stuff, then you can choose to do either of those two things, but they're very slightly different skill sets. And getting the candid moments at events is always interesting to me, and it's little things like people putting their helmet on a runner board or something, and then you see that and you capture that. So is your eye constantly looking around for those things, or are you just shooting enough that because you're sort of shooting, you're like, there's that, and go, or is the camera down, you're looking for the moment and then you pick the camera up and go for it?
Most of the time I'm looking for the moment. So I'll usually at an event, if you spot me, I'll be running somewhere or walking rather fast. Or if it's at the end of the day, I'll be just like hiding around a corner waiting to just basically watching. I watch people. I watch many people a lot of the time. And so I think I've spoken in other kind of interviews, because there's something I do is I watch for people who are especially pushing cars, or if I see someone running, I look to where they're running towards, and I try and like a bit like a game of chess where you try to plan forwards your move. I think, okay, they're going to run over there. What is going to happen at that point? And I try and prepare myself for that moment. And then other things I am just looking for, like you said, the helmet on the side. I'm like, okay, what part of the story does that tell? Sometimes I'll shoot what I think is going to be a good shot, and I'll pick my camera up, put it to my face, click the shutter, and then I think, that was actually quite a boring shot. I don't know really why I bothered. It's and then sometimes I grab my camera just to shoot something that's happening. I think, that's quite a nice moment, and then it's not until afterwards I look through the shots in Lightroom, and I'm like, oh no, actually that's got a lot more into it than I initially thought.
I was going to ask, actually, in post-processing, do you ever surprise yourself? Do you look at your picture and go, oh, I've done this?
Actually, sometimes, yes, not all the time, which, but every now and then I will think, I quite like that, actually. And then I get surprised myself. And so, because the other time is now it is mainly, I'm shooting because I think what I'm shooting is going to be a nice shot. And so when I get it to post-processing and I think, actually, no, that's a really boring shot. Why did I think that? It never sees the light of day past that moment. It's mainly looking and watching people, just looking for those moments, really.
That's excellent. I have a question from Larry Chen. So I've been chaining questions through these podcasts from the first one since we started back.
Okay.
So, I'm prefacing this by saying this is from Larry. What are your settings?
Oh man, okay, settings. So if I shoot on manual setting for the whole time, but autofocus, but manual kind of settings, and aperture is my go-to number first. So I like to shoot but somewhere between 1.4 and I don't know 2.8, depending on what I'm shooting and how close I am and stuff like that. And then it's either the shutter speed and the ISO will alter depending on that number. So if you were shooting in aperture priority mode, that will all be sorted out for you. But sometimes I kind of want to get a bit of movement. So say I'm shooting like driver changes at the members meeting, they have their more evening race and there's a driver change, and I love it because the light is not bright anymore. It's actually getting the sun's getting quite low and quite dark, and I have to slow my shutter down, but I don't want to bump my ISO up too high because I want the shutter to be ever so slightly too slow to be able to capture those slight blurs of movement to try and get that in the photograph. So my aperture is still kind of wide open, but I want to have the control over the shutter and that movement that I get from it. Then ISO is probably the one I like to move the least, but that's just simply from fear of going too high from my previous old camera days, I think. So
yes.
I'd rather slow my shutter right down than put my ISO too high. Shooting at such a wide aperture definitely helps for sure. And on the Nikon lenses, they're cracking lenses, so I'm not scared to shoot at 1.4. And it does mean that sometimes my shots are not always crystal clear, but I don't mind because I know that they still portray that moment perfectly. And with either a little bit of help of sharpening in post-production, I mean, if it's really bad, then I think, no, I've just got to get rid of it and I'll get really annoyed that I've missed the shot. So, but otherwise, no, I do probably shoot at between 1.4 and 1.8 quite a lot, I think. Yeah.
Perfect. For listeners, I will briefly pause the camera nerdery. We will return to it because I love it. I'm going to go on to road trips and stuff because you do a bunch of them.
Love them.
And yeah, it seems to be one of the things you enjoy most, both about your job and living in this world we live in. So it would be trite to ask you your favourite road trip. So what's your favourite road trip?
Oh man, it's so hard. So I think one of my favourites would have to be I took Craig away for his birthday I borrowed a Mercedes 280 SL. And just driving through Scotland when it's a little bit rainy, a little bit cold, in an open top car with your woolly hat on, your scarf, and I just the feeling and the light I absolutely love. That I think we went to Scotland in it would have been mid to late September, and autumn is my favourite time of year to shoot. The light's perfect, the colours are amazing, and Scotland is my favourite place I think in the world. So that would probably be. Yeah, my favorite road trip, but it's difficult because then you have ones like bigger ones like with Classic Mini. We drove last year from Athens to Oxford, and you just think that's an incredible journey. And I did it with these amazing people, and we got to meet some incredible people along the way of all the mini clubs. And you just think I'm never gonna forget that trip. And there are so many road trips I could talk about that I truly love.
So in general, what makes the perfect? That's a even more trite question. What makes a good road trip? I'm thinking actually more you've got experience of doing these things. Again, people kind of once we're allowed out to play again. People will be planning road trips and thinking about them, maybe even their first or doing another couple. So as somebody that's experienced in them, what kind of makes a good road trip or an adventure in your car or on your bike for you? What would not tips so much as, but for you, what makes a good experience of that?
So this might be a funny one, but to an extent, the element of fear. So for me, driving a classic car a long way is that element of fear. You have no idea if you're going to break down and what you're going to do if you break down, or what situation that's going to give you. And I think if if not the classic car, if you're doing it even in a modern car, going somewhere or a distance that you think to yourself, oh, okay, well, is my car going to be able to make that? Or I don't know, it's just something that brings you that little adrenaline rush. For me is the thing that makes an amazing road trip, because the difference between, I think, a holiday and an adventure is the element of fear and things going wrong. If nothing goes wrong, it's just a holiday. If things go wrong, it's an adventure. And or the chance of things to go wrong, should I say? You don't always want things to go wrong. You definitely don't want things to go wrong. But otherwise it's I don't know. So for me, one of the things my first kind of proper road trip that I deemed a road trip and not a holiday was I went to Scotland in my Mini on my own. So, Scotland is, I was in the UK, it wasn't a scary distance or place or anything like that. But the fact I was going on my own in a classic car, and I still don't know loads about how to, if I broke down on the side of the road, I got some tools, but I think, I can't do a whole head gasket change on the side of the road. So I think for me, that was the element of fear that brought that adventure. It doesn't have to be anything scary, but I think just that adventure side of things.
Amy Shaw and the frisson of danger.
Yeah. But then otherwise, road trip wise, it just you're in that car for a long time. So I would personally say go in something that you really love. So a classic car for me is a road trip. Like if I can do road trips in newer cars, it's just more of a, I don't know, luxurious, which is some people may love. But I don't know. It's the longest road trip I did in a newer car would have been a Toyota Hilux, which is a funny trip. I went with my mom, my dad, my brother, and his now wife. And this is a tip for a road trip. Don't go with 5 people, because it's fine, but all of you are in very close, you're very close. And however well you get on, there will be arguments, and people want to stop at some points and people don't want to stop. The less amount of people you have, for me, the nicer it is, because I loved that trip. But it was definitely there were definitely points where some of us were like, no, I just need my own space now. I think if you just go you and somebody else, that's awesome. Unless you can really, really get on with the people you're with, because you're together a lot.
Yeah, I should imagine if the guys that came to SEMA with me are listening, they realise that spending 5 or 6 days with me is probably less pleasant than it might first appear, because you get on each other's nerves. And if you're travelling and something goes wrong, then be with someone you can definitely get on with for a decent amount of time. Seems like an absolutely top tip.
Exactly, but I think that's also the good thing about motorcycle road trips, is that you kind of are on your own quite a lot, especially if you're not talking to each other in Bluetooth headphones. You do have that kind of space on your own, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. So when doing the Great Mallee Rally, there was about 100 riders, but you never felt like you were overwhelmed. You just had these bits that you all knew you were going to stop, and it just made it a lot smoother, I think, in that sense.
Yeah, you'll talk about the frisson of danger on a trip. I suppose is the difference between like a grand tour and an adventurous road trip.
Yes.
Like a grand tour will be something where you would expect to be able to reach your hotel at the end of it, and the other one you might end up camping by the roadside while you try to work out how to fix your car.
Exactly.
And they're both different experiences.
Yeah, but which one are you going to remember and tell when your grandkids? It's like, I think the stories that my dad tells me about his road trips. Usually, I've not been like, oh, Dad, what's the easiest road trip you've ever done? I don't think I've ever asked him that. I've been like, Dad, what's been most scared you've ever been on a road trip? And he's talking about motorbike trips where they've got flat tires on mountains where there's not a town for 3 hours or something like that. And I'm like, wow, what did you do? And that is the thing that makes you excited to hear about road trips and want to do road trips yourself. It makes me feel excited.
Yeah, no, definitely. Have you looked at or thought about doing things like Paris to Peking, or have you actually done Paris to Peking?
I have not done it, but I would love to do it. And I actually met one of the organisers this year at Retromobile, and I was like, oh, can I have your card? And so I definitely wanted to make sure that person knew about me, because I would love to do it. I think that'd be an incredible trip. To answer your question, no, I've not done it, but would love to.
I will keep a lookout for the photographs emerging from the trip when you eventually get on it. So if you were planning a trip, would you start with the car or would you start with the destination? Because obviously the right car and the right destination, talking about your Scotland trip, seems to be the key to having it all come together perfectly. But where would you start?
That's a tough one. I think it depends. So I was meant to be over kind of right now. I was meant to be on a massive road trip around Ireland, around the Wild Atlantic Way, and I knew I wanted to go and do that location in a car, and then I was going to figure out the car afterwards. But then sometimes, like later in this year, hopefully, it's my 10th year of owning my Mini. So I decided that, okay, I've got the car. I want to go and do another road trip. So I'm planning to go from the most populated place in the UK to what I can consider the most remote place in the UK that I can get to in my car. And so that's kind of happened the opposite way around. So I think most of the time it would be... It depends what makes you happy. Do you want to go to a place and see a place, or have you got a vehicle that you love and you want to spend more time in and driving? So you can easily go from both sides. I don't think there's either one's the right or wrong answer.
That's perfectly legitimate way. Again, I've used perfectly legitimate a number of times in this conversation, and I need to stop. But I've got to keep doing it now. It will be one of my things.
Fine.
Yeah, it's perfectly legitimate. So actually, I'm going to use one of my emergency questions here, but not out of an emergency, just because it dovetails nicely. What is the scariest car you've been in? Is the question, but also scariest moment on a road trip would also work. And that could be like scariest car could be something that was shockingly fast and you're a passenger in and you did not enjoy this, or something that feels like it's about to fall apart. Any of those things.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I think because the thing is the speed doesn't really scare me. I think the speed with some because usually whenever I've gone really fast in a car, it's been with a professional racing driver. So I've just managed to enjoy it to the full. So I got to a Ferrari got me a seat up the hill at Festival of Speed, and I was with Sam Bird, and that was just wicked fun because I had no fear whatsoever. I just knew I was with somebody that was totally safe and I could enjoy it. I think the biggest fear I know what a big fear on a road trip, not really a fear, but it was more of a, oh no, I really am stuck at this point, I don't know what to do, was Craig and I were driving to Denmark to go and pick up his hot rod, Old Red. And it got to, we at the time had borrowed a van and a trailer, and the initial van and trailer that we'd agreed to borrow, we could drive with our normal UK driving licenses. The day that we went and picked this van and trailer up, they were like, oh, sorry, we didn't have the trailer and the van that you needed, so we've got you a bigger van and a bigger trailer. And we're like, crap, we don't technically have the ability to we haven't got the license to drive this. And we're like, we'll be fine. It'll be fine. Anyway, yeah. So we left the next day, and we just got over on the ferry, got to Germany, and it was about 11 o'clock at night. And we thought, right, we'll just do it for a little bit longer, for another hour, and then we'll stop. But yeah, we'll stop somewhere. And this one night of the year, the German police pull over every single car on that stretch of motorway and check all of their documents, their insurance, everything. So, they saw that we didn't have the licenses, and they were like, it was me that was driving at the time, we got pulled over, and they were like, we're going to fine you, I think it was €500, and you're not allowed to drive away from this car park for the night. And honestly, there were hundreds of people there with sniffer dogs, helicopters, TV camera crews. And I was like, crap, what do we do now? We're stuck in Germany in a car park and with nothing around. What are we going to do? At the time, we'd just got back from Hong Kong, and Craig had got a severe chest infection. So he was really poorly at that time as well. And we had to sleep in this van. And I think it was in March, so it was not warm. And I had to go to Instagram, and I was like, help, we are stuck in Germany. Has anybody got this driving license? Can you fly out to this nearest airport? I will fly you out. And can you drive us up to Denmark and back to the UK? And it's crazy that the power of social media, because it's somebody that I'd met at an event about 2 months previously for honestly about 15 minutes. I chatted to them, was like, yeah, I've got the license, I'm free, let's go. And I was like, thank you. So yeah, we the next morning we slept in the van overnight, and unhitched the trailer from the van. I drove the van, went and picked up this practically stranger to then come and drive us to the rest of the trip to Denmark and back, which was about another five days of driving, I think. And yeah, we've been friends with him ever since, and he's such an awesome guy. So.
I can say that's a friend for life right there. Like somebody that flies out to Germany to help you pick up a car. That's amazing.
So I still feel like we need to pay that forward. So I've not had the opportunity yet where something's come up for somebody else, for us to help, but I definitely owe the universe a favour.
Yeah. Karma is now in you're in debt into your karma.
Exactly. Yes.
That's fantastic. What again, power of social media and sort of the community around car stuff. Really, it's always interesting to me to see the lengths people will go to for other people that they barely even know from the internet. You know, it's
exactly. Yeah, and I mean also people like obviously we've got minis and mini clubs, and if you were in a club or not even in a club, but if I was stuck somewhere on the planet and I was like, crap, my mini's broken down, I need some help, this community of mini owners will jump to help you. And it's so lovely that in the car world, I think if you're either in the car world with your own car or the motorbike world, you all have this sense of community to help one another out. And I don't know how many other kind of communities of hobbies have got that connection.
I think it's partly because of the fact that cars and motorbikes are there for traveling. So you kind of like they're going to get everywhere, and so the people are everywhere as well, and it's or they're just super passionate about these things. But that's a wonderful story. I love it. What is, or who is Amy Shaw when you're not working, when you're not a photographer? What are you doing?
Mainly, well, that's a good question right now, because at the minute I feel like I've stopped being a photographer for a little while. So we genuinely, to my absolute core, Craig and I love our cars and motorcycles, so we are still definitely car and motorcycle people, and I will still bring a camera with me when we go out, and if we go and see friends, I'll still bring a camera with me. So I do still consider it a hobby, which I'm really pleased about. But otherwise, we're quite massively, especially at the moment that we have time, we're quite into our health and fitness. I'm constantly reading articles about how to keep fit, and being a photographer, my health has dramatically declined because of it. I mean, I have enjoyed many, many wonderful restaurants and lots of lovely wine and sitting down in many road trips, but it doesn't do well for your waistline. So
I kind of find the opposite actually. Not that it makes me fit, but it breaks me down in the other way. So when you're covering like 3 or 4 days at an event, by the time you get to the Monday afterwards, just everything's broken. Your back aches because you're carrying around heavy cameras and everything. Is that a thing you're finding?
Yeah, absolutely knackering. And especially, so I've got a bit of an issue with my shoulder that I had to, for quite a long time, get sports massages every 5 weeks to try and pummel my shoulder, because, I carry my cameras on using a harness, and it definitely I can feel it by the end of the week and of a long shoot. And it's physically, I kind of, it concerns me, because I do think to myself, all right, if I'm going to do this until I retire, if I ever retire, what's my 60-year-old body going to be able to carry? And so I probably have to go definitely into a lot more mirrorless, because the DSLR is definitely heavy. But I'm physically drained by the end of it, and all I want to do is sleep. I think the most I've ever slept is after my first Festival of Speed. 4 days at start waking up at 5:36 in the morning and shooting till 10 at night or something, because we'd also have to shoot the evening parties as well, so there'd be quite a lot of big meals and dinners at the Goodwood House, and they were the long days.
Yeah, that's a kind of the almost hidden side of photography, is that you're carrying these big weights around with you, and it sort of destroys your back and your legs and your shoulders.
Oh, I tell you, my knees. The problem is that's why I like getting quite low for my shots.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I do a squat down, and then I try to get back up again. I'm like, oh, that wasn't very good form. So, yeah, I think my knees are going to be the thing that'll screw me over in the future.
Yeah. No, that's a familiar story. Yeah, it's hard work, but yeah. So how do you cope with shooting a busy event? I mean, you're actually there's an associated question to this, I guess. Is you're a celebrity photographer? Your face is out there, people see you. How is that being out in a crowd trying to do your job with that being a thing?
So initially it was like really cool. I was like, oh my God, I just got noticed. And that was like cool. And I still love talking to people who, really like my work, and it genuinely warms my heart. The only issue sometimes is if I'm, I don't know if you get this, but you can get creative block, or you've not quite warmed up ready for the day. So especially if I've just arrived at a revival, it's like kind of the Friday morning, I'm not ready to, I don't feel I like the photographs that I'm taking up to that point. And so I'm really just trying to get into the groove of it. And and not only people who kind of follow my work, but also, I've got such a massive network of friends as well that I want to stop and talk to. And I do end up wanting to talk to people quite a lot. But it means that my warming up of, kind of creativity slows. And I get a bit stressed, a bit nervous. I think, I'm not creating good stuff here. So that can be a little bit difficult. And sometimes I feel really horrible because I might have to cut a conversation a little bit short, or mid-conversation I'm still flicking my eyes around because I'm looking for those shots still, because I do not want to miss a moment, and I feel rude. I feel actually quite rude that makes me feel really bad. And when I have the time to stop and chat to people, I really love it. But sometimes I have to just be a bit short, and I feel terrible afterwards because I'm like, I'm really sorry, I've just got to run and get the shot. And it's not that I don't value their time. I really genuinely do, but I also stress out about my work quite a lot. So.
Yeah, from my point of view, again, people that may or may not be listening to this that come to our events, if you see me at an event, I'm stressed because I'm particularly obviously when I'm organising, and I'm always on my way to do something else. Usually that's unplanned or stressful. So similar to you, it's not that I don't wish to stop and talk to people. It's more that there's something else going on in my brain that I need to deal with right now. Otherwise the day's going to get worse.
Exactly, yes. And I think the thing is as well, like a lot of people are like, we'll grab a cup of coffee at Revival. I keep going back to Revival, but it's is the main kind of way I work. And I just think to myself, I would really, I'll try. I'd really love that, but most of the time I do not stop when I'm at these events, purely because I feel this pressure. I don't think anybody puts this pressure on me. I think I put it on myself to try and get the best shots that I can. And that does mean, to get 2,000 shots in a day, you really don't stop. You have to keep going. And if I finish a day and I think to myself, yes, I spoke to quite a lot of people and I enjoyed that, but I didn't produce the amount of photographs or the quality of photographs that I'm happy with, that's an issue. So I think, okay, tomorrow I'm going to go into that and make sure that I crack on with the photographs. And because at the end of the day, I'm still shooting for a client and I want my client to be happy. And it's not just about what I produce, but I need to make sure that I'm getting, ticking off their brief as well. And it's not until usually kind of Sunday afternoon that I think, okay, everything's got now. I can kind of wind down a little bit, and I'm usually really tired by then. So
But by the point at which you can actually talk to people, you just want to curl up in a hotel room or something somewhere and go to sleep.
Exactly. So no, I've got quite a lot of racing driving friends that is really lovely, because they're like, just when you get tired and you just want to sit down and hide, just come and have a cup of tea with us. And then sometimes that's what I do, just because then I can just sit and I don't have to speak to them. I can just have a cup of tea and sit and just look through my own photographs and think, okay, so I've got that. It's kind of like a reassessing of my images that I've got already.
That's a sort of small meditative moment to have a look at these things. So how do you cope in the crowds as well? So as someone that takes, and I'm not saying this as a massive negative against me, but someone that takes boring car photographs, it's difficult when you're in a very crowded setting. And obviously your photographs very much kind of lend themselves to that, but is there a point at which it's too much? There's too many people in a situation, or are you able to cope with that? How do you deal with crowds, really?
Yeah, I think one of the events which I start to struggle a bit more now with because of that is the Bicester Heritage Sunday Scrambles. I saw them initially when they first started, and nobody, well, not nobody, but very few people showed up, and it was really cool, but also difficult in that way to make it look like an interesting event. And then there was this beautiful part in between as they grew, where there was the perfect amount of people and the perfect amount of space. And then they've become, I mean, they're really awesome. So they've naturally become very popular, and now it's quite difficult to try and get clean shots of cars. So either you can wait until the crowds disperse after the event, or get there early when there's not very many crowds. Most of the time I try to get there early, so there's that perfect level still. But otherwise it's generally just trying to shoot, having people in the foreground, waiting for those gaps. If it has to be a part of a shoot or a shot where there aren't no people around it at all. So I did a shoot with Charles Leclerc in Portofino in Italy, which was really cool, but there were quite a lot of crowds. And so I had to have, Craig came with me, and I had an editor and a journalist, and they kind of kept the crowds away for honestly, about 10 seconds, where I got a shot of Charles with the car, and then all the crowds would come back again. So it can be quite difficult, but I mean, the thing I try to say is use it to your advantage. And I try to, use people's legs in photographs and have their legs maybe cover half of a car, or focus on the legs instead, because that's more interesting, and you can get the essence of people looking at that car without needing to photograph that moment as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. So you have a very distinctive style, and as I say, there's more photographers doing it now, and I think that's genuinely a good thing for perhaps I don't know if it's upsetting from your point of view, because people are now trying to sort of take your style, copy your style, but from an external point of view, it's a more interesting set of photographs will come out of any given event now, because people are taking these more naturalistic photos. Did you develop that style? Or is it just how you've always shot? Because you said you did weddings, and it is a very almost wedding style of photograph, taking photographs in a sort of candid manner with the natural light within a place. It's very much a skill I think that wedding photographers bring when they're taking photos. So how did that come about as a style you ended up doing?
I think it's exactly that, really, the wedding. So when I first got into, I've always been a people photographer. I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a car photographer. It is the people that interest me. So when I was a teenager, I would flick through magazines or go on Pinterest at the time that would just started out, and I would find all these photographs of people, and a lot of them tended to be from weddings, and they were the things that, the images that inspired me. And the ones I had from magazines, I would rip out and stick on my bedroom wall. And so I had a massive wall that was just these photographs of my, that inspired me. And I think it's just from all of these different aspects that created my own way of shooting now. And you do gravitate towards the thing that interests you the most. So this is the thing about what I consider the boring car shots. To be able to take a photograph of purely a car, especially in a studio setting, and to make it really interesting and engaging, is a skill way beyond my own skill sets, because I could not do that. I don't have the knowledge or the creativity, and there are some fantastic photographers that do that so well. They can take what I consider it could be a boring car shot and make it not boring, and that's something I don't think I could do. And so my own style will have come from what I found interesting, and then I realized that I could do because of that interest, which is those kind of journalistic, candid moments. And weddings are a great way to get used to shooting those moments and also enjoying them, because you are having to look at whatever's happening at that moment and shoot what's available to you. The weather may be hammering it down with rain, or it might be one of the ones that is that'd be like a middle of the summer wedding, and it would be like clear blue skies. And for photographers, you'll know that when the sun is really high in the middle of summer, it's boring, flat, colourful light. And you just think, oh, there is no atmosphere in this whatsoever. But the mother of the bride would always go, oh, perfect weather for it, isn't it? And I'm like,
for you, maybe.
Yeah. And I think, later on this evening. But it's especially when doing like formal wedding photographs. If you've got the sun directly overhead, then you have this not very nice shadow of the people's noses on their face, and you get this in every single shot. And the mother of the bride will also want to wear her hat, which looks lovely, but her face will suddenly be very dark in comparison to everybody else's faces. And yes, that's when you can start bringing out artificial lighting or reflectors. And but as I've said, my own inspirations, that doesn't that's not my way of working. So that can be a little bit difficult, but it is. They are the experiences that have created the style that I currently have, and So, sorry, I've kind of extended that answer for you.
That's no need to apologise. This is a podcast; they can go on forever. Well, until we need lunch. So you're. I don't want to get too far into it because you cover it elsewhere, but you have a post-processing style. I'm assuming you have a consistent post-processing style rather than doing it on an individual picture-by-picture basis, or
So basically, that has also probably come from the wedding inspiration as well. So a lot of weddings have got this kind of softer look about them, and I love these really dark, moody wedding photographs that you can get, and I think, oh, I like that, but I always get a bit too scared about doing it myself. So basically, I think finding people's work who inspire me has created this editing style which I've kind of produced. And if you ever look at any of my older work from, say, 5 years ago to the work now, you'll never you don't notice the change, but look at the two photographs next to each other and you can see a difference. So I do tweak my style depending on how I'm feeling kind of at that moment, but I will then stick with it for a year or 2 years, and it never changes too much. So I think my earlier edits had kind of even hazier blacks than they do now. I've blackened my blacks a little bit, and but it's a style that I've kind of just produced from looking at my own inspirations and thinking, okay, I really love the way that this photographer does that, and I really like the way that this other photographer does this. What if I produced those things together in my own work? And I mean, it's probably a collection of maybe 20 or 30 different photographers that I've looked at and thought, I really like these people because of these reasons, and that has produced me and my own work. So if you changed, say, just 5 of those photographers of that 30 with a totally different 5, you would produce something completely different to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all the sum of our influences in some way, and I'm not talking about just from a photography point of view. I'm talking about from a car point of view. I mean, our whole retro ride thing is about sort of modifying cars and that kind of stuff, and you draw influences from all over the place, and it's just how you knit them together. And there might be some influences in whatever walk of life you're doing that don't mesh well together. Mm-hmm. Or you might be that person that finds the key that makes those two disparate things work. And I think that's true in photography, in car building, in whatever it is you're doing. It would be interesting almost to dissect down what particular bits are influencing you to produce in the way you do, but that would be an entirely different podcast. That would be a much geekier podcast. So how are you finding covering sort of events and road trips now compared to when you first started out? I mean, obviously now you're an ambassador for Nikon, and I should imagine you're slightly better equipped than you once were. So what's kind of the key differences between your sort of 10 years of being a professional photographer, or 7? It's 7 years of being a professional photographer. From then to now, and what were the key points of change for you?
So initially when I started, I only had one camera and like two lenses. So I think I had my 50mm was my first lens, and then I got 35. And so in terms of gear, I've definitely branched out to two cameras at least, which I'll have with me, and a couple of other lenses. But in terms of tech-wise, that's mainly the expansion that I've done, because I still want to stay true to my own roots of the way I like to work and my inspirations. So, Henri Cartier-Bresson only ever shot with, he's famous for having one camera and his 50mm lens, and that's what he shot for the majority of his life's work. And so I think in the way that I work, I've probably, initially I was a lot more kind of, everything was new and exciting, and it still is exciting, but it's no longer new. So I've had to kind of think of it also as it gets really boring now. Not really boring. Like, I get really boring now, because I have to think now about, okay, in terms of business, can I afford to do this? Is this going to be helpful? Am I going to enjoy it still? So there's so many events and shoots that I get invited to, but either they will be unpaid, or it's just like if you want, come along. Initially, when I first started out, I would have said yes to all of those, because I had the time and I had the energy and the excitement to go and do them all. And I still have all of those things. But now that I've become a lot busier, it's kind of also been a bit detrimental. And I think, I have to turn down some of these incredible opportunities simply because I don't have the time to do it. And so it's a bit of a shame in that sense. But at the same time, the way that my work has evolved and the way that I've evolved means that I'm now getting invited on some truly incredible shoots and events, and it really makes me have to pick out the things I think are going to be really enjoyable. I think that's the main thing. I still make sure that it's never just about business, but it has to be enjoyable still, because otherwise what's the point? There's no point doing a job that you really don't enjoy, regardless of how much either money or recognition you're going to get from it, because it would just be a really sad job. So I think the change has been, I have to balance the business side of things as well as the what I want to shoot, but still make sure that I enjoy the job that I'm doing. If I don't, then I think I'll have a big problem. So currently, I've not got to that point.
Hopefully you don't get there at all. I guess it's the opening up of opportunity versus the opportunity to actually take people up on those things, because
yes,
everybody would enjoy you being at their event, road trip, etc., but you can't do them all, so then you have to start picking, and then I guess it becomes, as you say, a business decision. So it's for obviously numerous different parameters of what you may be able to get out of it or bring to the table with it. But I think that's why it's weird.
Exactly, it is weird, and that's why it does have to boil down to how much fun do I think I'm going to have. So I still think that's a fairly kind of good way to go about things, because if you're not enjoying it, then again, what is the point? So
definitely, particularly if you have to be in a creative frame of mind as well.
Exactly, yes, because if honestly, the shoots that I've not enjoyed for whatever reason have created the work that I least like. And some shoots I've gone on and I've never shown the work to Instagram, for example, because I don't like what I produced. The client was happy, which is, I suppose, the main thing. They produced what they wanted, but I didn't like it in terms of myself, my brand, my work. And so there's not really a problem with that, but it does open your eyes to think, okay, I know what I want in my own career, and it's not to earn as much money as I can, or do whatever in that side of things, do really well in business, but I want to make sure that for me, my values are that I'm producing work that I like as well and I'm proud of.
Yeah, that's perfectly legitimate, and I will. God, I've used that phrase again. But I also just put in here, Jason, if you're listening, that's what Amy Shaw says. So do it. Anyway, I'm going to ask you, I think, 2 more questions if you have the time.
Absolutely.
I'm just deciding which order to do them in. I'm going to do them in a weird backwards order. What are your plans for the next 5 years or so, assuming we're ever allowed out of the house again?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question now, especially because who knows what's going to happen now? Like, I'm used to. I can't remember. I had quite a lot of flights last year, and so suddenly this year is completely different. And I suppose. Sorry, I've got a bit of a rubbish answer. I don't really know for the next 5 years because everything that has led me up to this point, I had no idea and no plan for. And so I think if I started planning for something, then. Yeah, I don't know if it didn't happen, would I be disappointed? I'd really like to do some more epic road trips. The kind of stories that I think I can only do this now whilst, I've not got kids that rely on me, or I've still got my health. Things that I need those that freedom to do. I'd love to do over the next 5 years. So things like being to Paris or whatever. That would be my. Over the next 5 years, the thing that I'd really want to achieve.
Get those big road trips under your belt, and
yes.
The memories from them. So an odd question to end on, but I like it. What is the fastest you've been in a car?
Oh man, probably going up the hill, I think, at festival speed was that is the other thing. I never managed to look at the actual speedo because I was just staring at the front of the car so much and just going I think it would be so much fun to have like a launch start, I don't know, in a McLaren on an airfield or something. That'd be wicked. The fastest I've gone under my own foot on the accelerator, I think I'm really pathetic, probably only like 110, 120 mile an hour on an airstrip in a Noble, I think. So,
that's nice.
But that was okay. Something along those lines. But I will anything that again brings me a little bit of fear, I will definitely be up for. So yeah, I mean the other. I had a bit of a scary in an aeroplane last year, almost to the day. Where we were in mid loop and we had engine failure at the top of the loop, and so
Lordy.
Yeah, so when we talk about thinking about going fast and fear, it's not the speed but sometimes the situation. So basically I was photographing another aeroplane, and the plane I was in was a little light aerobatic plane, and we were trying to photograph this slightly heavier plane, so we both had to tandem loop next to each other. I would photograph as we were going up into the loop because the guy wanted a photograph of his plane with the airfield beneath him. And then we did this and we got into loop, and because we were going slower than we should have been going, but slower than the plane would have been happy doing a loop, we got to the top upside down, and then there was silence, and I was like, oh, there's no engines. So we had to fall out of the sky for a couple of seconds to right ourselves and restart the stalled engines. And that was probably, if we're talking, if I'm imagining about fear moments, that would probably be the point where I had my fingers went tingly, went on the way down. So.
That's probably a familiarity thing as well. I should imagine that someone that's been in aerobatic planes that's stalled them a few times would be like, oh yeah, I've just got to do this now and off we go. But because you're not used to doing that,
it's exactly that. So I completely trust my pilot friend that I was with, and like he does this for a living. So but it was the point where he obviously, like, you felt like the in the plane you've got the stick in front of you as well, so you can control the plane if you want, and I felt the stick between my legs go, oh, so let's just quickly write that. This is a slight problem, and that was so I could, because I could see what he was doing behind me, from the gadgets going on in front of me, and so that was a little bit
that little bit of silence and that moment of you can feel the tension of the person that's in control of the thing, and you're like, oh, this isn't right.
Yeah, that was the slight scary, but it was wicked. That was such a fun day.
It's great opportunity. Well, thank you very much for your time, Amy. That has been very, very enjoyable. I'm hoping those that are listening enjoyed it as well. Got through the camera chat if that was not your thing, but it's been very entertaining either way from my point of view. So thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you very, very much.
We will be back, and I'm not sure who's next, but we will badger Amy for a question for them when we get to it. So we will see you all soon, and keep safe, and good luck.